Chair Niss,
Here.
Councilmember Ku,
Here.
Councilmember Tanaka, 3 present.
Good. Thank you all for being here tonight. We have one item on our agenda tonight, as you can see, which is that we're going to be looking at the sustainability plan, which we have been involved in for a long period of time. And I think, though, more than ever, I heard Shell Oil has backed out of their agreement with their lobbying group in the U.S. today. So what will that mean? But in response, thank you, in response to climate concerns. So I think that's really rather stunning. So thank you to both Greg and Lydia for being here. And we are going to start right in. And are you city manager tonight?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle Flaherty, Deputy City Manager. And with us tonight are Phil Boble and Christine Long, who will be presenting the Sustainability and Climate Change Work Plan for the year, since it is one of the Council's 4 priorities for the year.
And you're both in your sustainability hats tonight, correct?
Absolutely.
Good, good. Welcome.
Thank you. So should we just dive right in? So,
And unless there's something else we should be doing first, we are literally going to dive right in.
okay. Phil Boble, Public Works, and your first slide, first to remind or introduce the recommended motion that we'll deal with at the end, of course, is we're asking you to recommend to the full council to accept the sustainability work plan, which we're going to describe to you now. And just to remind,
Is that this one, or that one?
it's the big sheet.
Got it.
So a couple of those smaller colored sheets are just there in case you want to get involved in a couple of things that are coming up. But the key document probably to get in front of you is the one that folds out, and that is our work plan, the proposed work plan. And the city manager
It looks
asked us-
daunting.
well, yeah, at least it's colorful, right?
Right.
The city manager asked us to put together a work plan for each of these 4 priorities that the council adopted in February at the retreat. So one of them is sustainability, short cut statement of what was actually adopted. The sustainability climate action plan is documents that you had adopted and accepted earlier, and now what we're doing in light of the fact that you established it as a priority for 2019, we have a 2019 and 2020 work plan. The city manager asked that we add 2020 just so that you could, and it's not completely filled in yet, but so think of it as mostly a 2019 work plan, and we'll get into that. So the highlights of this are really the same as the highlights in the sustainability/climate action plan that we adopted earlier, and then we converted 4 of those into implementation plans, sustainability implementation plans. We had 7 chapters, and to give you a more digestible set of action items to deal with last year, the city manager put forward just 4 of those. So if you look at that next sheet that Christine's now got up on the board, you see that there's 4 on the first row and then 3 on the second row. And the reason is that those 4 are ones that you actually accepted last year, and then we deferred action on the details of the bottom 3. But what we're coming to you with now is a work plan for 2019 for all 7 of these project areas. And then when we do the 2020 update of the sustainability/climate action plan, 2020 update, will be doing all 7 of these. And Chair Niss, for example, you'd implored us to work on, and you were nervous about the fact that sea level rise wasn't one of those 4 that came forward, and other council people were sort of nervous that we weren't taking action on the details of those other 3. And
Should we
now,
also call it creek level rise? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Because that's,
right,
and those in Missouri would agree? Yeah.
yeah, right. Definitely the tide will back up into those creeks and cause that effect also. So anyway, we're trying to get all 7 of these back on track now, and it starts with this 2019-2020 work plan. So I wanted to just introduce quickly the folks behind these 7 chapters, because we've established a pretty large team of our staff to deal with this work plan, to deal with the Earth Day report that you're going to see on April 15th, and then the 2020 update. So all of these pieces, as we move forward now, are supported by a great team, we think, that we've assembled. And because of spring
And
break...
they're all here tonight?
They are, yes,
Great.
they are. Many of them are here, and I'll introduce them in just a second. But we got hit kind of hard with spring break and associated vacations and a few sick children here and there. So not everybody could be with us. Christine Tam is one that couldn't be with us, but Yvonne is here from the Development Center representing energy and the building side of that. So we're thrilled that Yvonne could be here. And because Christine couldn't be here, Shiva is with us. And I never try Shiva's last name, so don't get me started.
I don't know how to spell her first name. Is it S-H-I-V-A?
Yeah, and it's a guy, is sitting right next to, yeah, Yvonne there. So, and just to skip forward, since we're talking about Shiva, to electric vehicles, Hillary couldn't be here, so you'll see that we've got Shiva shown under, and he's the second in command of that very important group. So Shiva is here to support, answer any questions you've got in the electric vehicles area. And then mobility, Sylvia from Transportation couldn't be here tonight, and Christine is gonna, and others can chime in that are familiar also, but we've got that covered as well. Water, we have super well covered. We have both of our co-chairs here tonight, Carla Daly, she's the shorter of the two, and then the taller of the two, Karen North, is also here. And so we've got that very well covered for you tonight. For adaptation, sea level rise, the 5th one now in the 2nd row, Julie couldn't be here, but Christine is the co on that and obviously is here. So on natural environment, another one that many council people wanted to make sure we came back to quickly because of it includes the urban forest and our urban forest master plan. Ms. Koo, I think you were one that wanted to make sure we got to that. And Walter Passmore is our urban forester, and he's with us. Walter, can you just stop frowning? And, yeah, there you go. So, and last but not least, of course, Elise Sparbori. Elise is sort of new to our team, not new to our team, but Ron Arp, who was our lead in this area, is retiring in about a month, and so we've are bringing Elise into the fold, and she's going to be a great addition. So that's our team, and we're calling it the Sustainability Leadership Team. And there's a few hangers-on that have asked not to be introduced tonight, so we won't do that. But we're going to use this team in all of the areas where we're working in the future. So with that kind of intro, I'm going to ask Christine to go over the work plan. And it's on the side table, too. I think most of you have found it. Since the 8.5 by 11 version is so hard to read, we printed it out on a little bigger paper for all of you, and it's the very last thing in your stack there, Greg. Yeah, that's it. So that's the actual work plan. And you'll see in that first bracket, the first top rows are these 7 topics or chapters that we've been discussing. And rather than try to use this document to walk you through it, what Christine is going to do is we've got a slide on each of those 7, and the font will be even bigger and I think better. So that's what we're going to do next. Those bottom 2 areas are probably going to have less interest. I'll come back at the end and talk about the development of the 2020 SCAP update, which is a major work item for us over the next couple of years to get that done over the next 2 years. And then meetings and milestones, we're not going to try to go over that, but you can, if you have questions about it, we can deal with that. So Christine's now going to go one by one over those 7.
Good evening. Christine Long, Office of Sustainability. So I'm just going to provide a very, very high-level overview of these projects so we can get through the entire work plan, and then we can come back and drill deeper into each item, and you can ask questions directly of the SIP team leads. So for energy, I wanted to highlight that our energy projects are focused on 2 areas, energy efficiency and electrification. And as part of our induction cooktop campaign, we will be launching an induction cooktop loaner program at the Earth Day Festival, and that's in partnership with Actera. We are also expanding our heat pump water heater campaign. We went from rebating 10 heat pump water heaters in 2017 to 26 in 2018, and we hope to keep marketing that program.
And as you go along, would you keep trying to give us measurements? So I don't have any idea how many electric cooktops exist in Palo Alto and how many more you'd like to have in existence.
That's a great question. Yvonne, do you happen to know? That's not something we measure yet, is it?
We're just getting started with
Okay.
that.
So, the heat pump, is this like the is this like the like air conditioning heat to heat the water? Is that the idea?
More or less, yes.
Okay, cool. Actually, I looked into that for my house a while back, and at the time you guys didn't have a rebate, but that's exciting. Great.
No, we do. Yes, and I mean, they're more efficient, so.
So you could use you could basically use your air conditioner during summer to heat your water, right?
You want to take that, Shiva? It's more the hot water heater replacement
Oh, okay.
as opposed to,
Correct. So it's a electric powered water heater, but it absorbs the heat from outside and puts it into the,
Hook up to the air conditioning.
no.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But that would be a heat pump. It's possible to do that with a heat pump space heater, which takes a heat from, ejects the heat outside and then brings the air conditioning in.
Oh, before you leave, Shiva, so on this water heat pump, you said it takes the heat from outside, right? So what about the winter months?
The-
How does that, takes the
Even in the
heat-
winter months, there is sufficient heat in the ambient. It can still work as a heat pump.
Okay. And I wanted to ask if it might be possible when you bring this back to council to have a picture maybe of a heat pump so we can, everybody kind of gets to see what it does and how does it take air from the outside and the ambient thing that you're talking about. So picture might be helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So just a cross, so if we had a air conditioner and we wanted to use that to heat our water, would that be eligible for the rebate or no?
These are, we're rebating new systems.
Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, so like if you got, because they have the systems now where you can use the heat from your air conditioner, right,
Mhm.
to heat your water. And so I was wondering if,
That would be eligible.
that's awesome.
So moving on, so for mobility, I'd like to highlight that we launched our FTA-funded Mobility on Demand pilot project in March. We are about to start recruiting City of Palo Alto staff to participate in the pilot. We hope to get up to 20 staff to participate, and the goal of the project is to increase staff participation in commute benefits and to reduce single occupancy vehicle travel. We also just went to council and received a one-year extension of our bike share and e-scooter pilot program. The pilot program went live on April 1st, 2018, and it's now been extended to March 31st, 2020.
Again, does this also coordinate with, thank you. Does this coordinate with our TMA program as well?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yes, it does. It's the transportation demand management for city employees, which is similar to what the TMA is trying to do for downtown employees, but we're not using the TMA to provide this service to city employees at this time.
What is FTA?
Pardon me?
FTA?
A Federal Transit Administration. It's a grant from the federal government.
How much is the grant?
It's a little bit over $1 million.
And it's a grant that involves doing pilots not only in the city of Palo Alto, but also in other cities. So Menlo Park, Mountain View are participating as well.
I saw that some cities, because one of the big issues is, we have traffic and parking problems. That one of the things that people are trying to do, which also ties into mobility here, is trying to have more protected bike lanes, right? So I don't know if that's in that.
Greg, can
also.
you?
Yeah, I don't know if that's. Oh, sorry. What did you say?
Yeah, perfect.
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't know if it actually will, but we have protected bike lanes, it encourages more people to bike, right? Because a lot of people don't want to do it because they're worried about getting hit by a car, right? But if you have protected bike lanes, that'll encourage more people, right? And we have really great terrain for it. It's very flat. The weather, well, generally doesn't rain except for this year. So I don't know, is this something that we can make part of this program? Because I think that's probably one of the biggest wins, and then it helps other areas too, right? It helps with the traffic problem, the parking problems. It also helps the environment.
We do have the Bikeways Master Plan for the city. Some of those projects have been slowed down based on community feedback recently.
Oh, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like protected bike lanes. So in fact, I just saw this tweet. I forgot which city it was, but they're basically, I think it was Cambridge. So Cambridge is basically saying any street that's being redone has to be a protected bike lane, right? Because I think like a lot of people, maybe even some people in this room wouldn't bike because they feel it's dangerous. But if you have protected bike lanes, then it enables more people to bike.
Right, okay, great, thank you.
So is that a possibility?
Examining bicycle infrastructure is part of our 2018 to 2020 SIP. I know that it's currently, the bike work is currently on hold for various reasons, including staffing issues, but it is part of our overall SIP. So when Sylvia's back from spring break, I can talk with her about it.
Okay, great.
So for electric vehicles, what I would like to highlight is that we are in the process of adding electric vehicles to our city fleet. We currently have 2 electric Ford Focuses in the fleet right now. And in this calendar year, we will be adding 2 Chevy Bolts. We also have a pilot.
I missed the first thing you said.
Yes.
You just said 2 bolts or volts?
The Bolts, the all-electric.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the one before that was?
We currently have 2 electric Ford Focuses in the fleet right now. And we have a pilot project to add 3 Ford pickups with it's called an F-150 plug-in hybrid conversion. Electric trucks there's a scarcity in the market for viable electric trucks. So we are piloting these Ford pickups that will be converted into plug-in hybrids. We also have been piloting an all-electric garbage truck, and that's been since late 2018. In addition, we currently have 44 EV chargers in city garages with an additional 9 at our libraries. And we are going to be adding 26 more charger ports in 2019. Of those 26, 10 are going to be in the City Hall garage.
So you said expand rebate program. What rebate program is that?
We have a rebate program that, well, we have multiple rebate programs, some for the EV charger infrastructure, some for multifamily homes, some for the actual purchase of EVs itself. So we want to expand the entire gamut of our.
What's the program for EVs? Like, what kind of rebates do you get?
So we have the SunShares Group Buy program.
You have a what?
SunShares Group Buy
Okay.
program. Last year, I believe we had 4 purchases by Palo Alto residents, which doesn't seem like a lot, but is actually the most purchases of any city participating in the SunShares program.
So you get like a discount on your Tesla? Is that the way it works, or?
I don't think Tesla participates in the program, but yes, you get a discount on like a Chevy Bolt or it's dependent on the dealers that participate in the program. So there are specific dealers you can go to, and they will provide an additional discount above and beyond the federal and the California discounts.
What about expanding it not to just cars, but also to like electric bikes or electric scooters, electric skateboards, right? Other EVs, right? Like, so for instance, I rode my electric skateboard here, right? But I didn't get any rebate, right? But it's probably one of the most eco-friendly things out there in terms of like carbon footprint, right? So why not try to encourage not just cars, but also other electric portable vehicles, especially the smaller ones, because those don't take up parking, right? Doesn't create traffic, right? It has a lot lower carbon footprint. So if we really are trying to be like eco-friendly, right? Really trying to make an impact in terms of climate change.
Does yours plug in?
My skateboard?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how I
I
charge it.
didn't know that.
Yeah, you have to charge it, yeah. So, but, I mean, I'm just thinking like bikes, skateboards, scooters, I mean, in terms of carbon footprint, they have one of the lowest carbon footprints compared to like a car, right? If you look at like a Tesla or any size car, it's like 1,000 times more carbon footprint than one of these small electric portable vehicles. And so I can't see why we want to try to encourage more of those, right? So that more people will take that, and also reduces traffic problems too, right?
That
And
is a
also,
great
like, why not
suggestion.
also, like,
Yeah.
if you're doing chargers for cars, why not chargers for skateboards or scooters, right? Like, sometimes, it's, like, I could tell you sometimes it's hard for someone that's riding an electric skateboard to find a place to plug it in, right? So, it would be nice to have, I mean, I'm not sure it's just skateboard, I'm sure scooters and bikes too, like, make it convenient. So like some of the bike racks, right, they don't have any place to plug in, right? So what about the bikes, right? So, because I think, transportation is like what percentage of our carbon footprint? Do you guys know?
94%.
94%, okay,
Yeah.
so that's massive, right? And even if you go from gas to electric, it's still, because you're inherently having to move a big, massive vehicle, right? 2-ton vehicle, right? Somewhere, right? To move one person, that's maybe 100 pounds, 200 pounds, right? Versus a bike or a skateboard or scooter, which is, maybe a 10-pound or 20-pound vehicle moving a 100-pound person, right? Or 200-pound person, right? And the environmental impact of that is much, much greater, right? So I think, there seems to be a lot of incentives to encourage cars, right? But cars, well, first of all, cars are really expensive, right? But they have impact on, just to build them, they're very expensive, right? Think about all the environmental impact of building them. To park them, right? I mean, you're spending $60,000, $120,000 per car to park them, right? So very expensive. And then just to fuel them as well, to charge them, right? Versus these small electric portable vehicles are dramatically cheaper to produce, right? Dramatically cheaper to charge. They take no parking spaces, right? So I guess I like the name electric vehicles, but it just seems to be excluding out the things that would actually have the biggest impact on our carbon footprint, right?
Right.
Imagine if all of us, I mean, did anyone here bike here or take a skateboard or scooter? Probably no one, just me, right?
Scooter.
Scooter, okay, there you go, right? So how do we change from like 3 people in the room taking a scooter or electric, and everyone else driving. How do we change that, right? Because if 94% of our carbon footprint is transportation, I mean, hopefully more people in this room will actually do that, right? Because it's a little bit disingenuous to say, oh yeah, we want to be a green city, but then we all get in our cars and drive somewhere, right? Whether it's a Tesla or some other gas-powered car, right?
Right. And you make a good point there, and I do want to point out, there is some overlap between the electric vehicle SIP team and the mobility SIP team, and this is one of those issues. So I know that the Transportation Department is really exploring e-bikes and e-scooters. I'm not sure about e-skateboards, but
But they should, right? They all
they
fall
should, right.
for one wheels or whatever it is, right?
Right, but they are exploring those as solutions for the first, last mile issue. But I will add this to the list of things to discuss with Sylvia and you.
Yeah, I guess I just, I mean, because like you're spending some major buckaroos on this program, right? Because buying an electric car is actually really expensive, and, you know, bringing cables into your garage and having these chargers are very, very expensive. But just imagine if you subsidize, let's say, the purchase of an electric scooter or electric bike. Think about how much further that could go, right? In terms of really making an impact on carbon footprint versus, oh, you help someone buy one, you know, luxury car, right? I mean, how does that helps, I suppose, but that's just a little bit, right? Versus, think about, like, if you really get these like, imagine if we had a program where, you know, half off some sort of electric portable vehicle, right? Think about the amount of people that would maybe switch over, right? Because we have a really ideal terrain, like we're flat, right? We're not like San Francisco or some other place where we have massive hills and stuff, right?
We will definitely build that in.
What form of charging does the scooters use and the skateboard use? Is this just this plug
Yeah,
here?
just these points.
Oh, so what you're asking for is more in the garage area?
Yeah,
or-
I don't have an electric bike, but I know like a lot of people ride electric bikes now, right? But if you try to park downstairs, there's nowhere to
No
charge.
charge.
There's no charging place, right? Or like, sometimes like, you know, like for my skateboard, there's nowhere to hang it, right? So, I mean, if you have a place where you could hang your electric skateboard and then charge it, that'd be great. Not just kind of put it against the wall and hopefully nobody trips on it, right? But I mean,
Oh, I see.
we make infrastructure for cars, which are very expensive, which has a huge carbon footprint, but we don't make the same for these small electric portable vehicles, which have a much more dramatic impact on the environment. And so I think the same money we spend here, if we spend just like a small portion of it for these small electric portable vehicles, I think the impact would be much, much greater.
And I do know that the charge point chargers that we currently have, you have the option of either using the L2 charger, or there's like a little box that opens up that's just like a plug. What I don't know is if you can
Well, how
park
would-
your bicycle there
Well, how
to
would
use
you
it,
probably could, but
but
the problem is, how do you like, make
How do
sure
you
that
lock
it's-
your bike?
Yeah, lock it
Yeah.
up, right? Right, how do you make it so that it's like, because electric bikes are kind of, you know, maybe $1,000, $2,000, right? And then just to leave it freestanding and hope no one takes it is like asking for trouble.
But that's one of the things we could look at, if you really had enough bikes that were going to plug in. I just asked David on the side, how do we, what division do we have with ChargePoint as to who gets paid what?
Sheila, can you take that one?
In other words, do we make any money on it, or is it just to break even?
It's to break even. So we do charge 23 cents a kW kilowatt hours of electricity dispensed. So that's whoever is charging pays that amount. And of course, the city's Public Works Department maintains those chargers.
But to use them, you have to have the ChargePoint account, of course.
Correct, but that's yes, you have to have the.
Yeah.
Or you could also use your credit card if it has an optical charger, optically enabled credit card. You can swipe the credit card and use that too.
What is optically enabled?
Thank you.
Has our picture on it, or?
Little RFID tag.
Yeah, there is a, I guess both mine don't have it. You kind of,
Does anyone have one?
David?
yeah, okay. yeah.
Ah,
Oh, that
So
thing.
it's like the near,
what is it? NF something, near field communication, kind of like you can, like Apple Pay basically. It works like that with a credit
Oh,
card
really?
or your phone.
Didn't know it existed even.
Yeah, so it'll have this symbol
Yeah.
there.
It's a little heavier.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, slightly different. Must have more stuff in it.
So for water, what I would like to highlight is that we have a Northwest County Recycled Water Strategic Plan that will be coming to the full council with options for using recycled water. And when we talk about recycled water in this context, we are talking about highly treated wastewater from the Palo Alto plant. We are also having a recycled water strategic plan update public meeting on April 30th. So those are the highlights for water.
So I just went to a water conference in Austin this past week, and there was a great concentration on recycled water, to the point where, at the end of the day, the reception sponsored beer made from recycled water, which tasted fine. Thought it was a good use of recycled water. But there was a lot of discussion about recycling because, water is such a huge issue. So this is an interesting nonprofit called Water Now, which has grown from maybe 25 or 30 members 4 or 5 years ago to, I think, 300 or 400 members now. So, and I'm telling you all that is a way to say people are really concerned about water.
Yes.
And, what do you do for your long-term sources? This was in Austin, which is on the lower Colorado, but as you know, the rest of the Colorado, what were we saying today, hits 8 states? Something astonishing, right? And the water wars are not over, no matter what. But it was fascinating to have so much on recycled water.
That's great. That's really great. So now we're getting into the areas that Phil talked about that are not currently in the 2018 to 2020 SIP, but are priority areas. So for sea level rise, we have spent a lot of time with council on sea level rise. The sea level rise adaptation policy was just adopted in March. And so our next steps are conducting a vulnerability assessment and then exploring the development of a task force. Then for natural environment, I would like to highlight the carbon sequestration tree planting project. That's a very exciting project that looks at benefits that we haven't really explored that much. So building a better tree canopy cover provides shade and relief from urban heat. And it also has this relatively new carbon sequestration value related to planting trees. So that's something we haven't really explored yet. So we're very excited about that project. And then finally, for zero waste, I'd like to bring to your attention that on May 20th, we will be bringing 2 draft ordinances to the full council. They'll be on one staff report that you'll get in early May. So we have a construction deconstruction ordinance and a food wear ordinance. And we have some sort of backup materials in your packet related to that. And now Phil is going to conclude with an update on our 2020 Sustainability and Climate Action Plan update.
Could we just spend a few minutes on zero waste, though?
Of course.
As I said, I have become more and more concerned about our recycling. So do you want to say some more about that, Phil, and just start us down what's probably going to be a new path as far as how we get rid of our recycles that we maybe are going to be recycling different?
And
Lee?
Elise is here. Oh, sorry. Phil Boble, Public Works, and Elise Barbori is here as well. So the article you just showed me and what was in the Merck yesterday or the day before as their lead article highlights a problem that started a long time ago but was highlighted by China's new standards. And that has meant that we're not taking material to China anymore. Green Waste, our hauler, has recognized that their new standards are tough enough. We almost meet them, but we don't meet them with every load. So green waste couldn't be in a position of having stuff go all the way over there and then be rejected, right? So they've said, we're not taking mixed paper to China anymore, which was the main thing that was going there. Mixed paper and mixed plastics. So for the moment, we've found markets in the United States for mixed plastics, which is great. But as other entities like us keep looking for markets in the United States, we're not going to find enough right now. There isn't enough capacity to deal with all of the plastics that are being generated, frankly. For the moment, we've kind of ahead of the game reached out and found plastic markets in the United States. Mixed paper, we've gone to other countries in Asia for the moment. But this isn't, and you heard Bob Winslow come to council a couple months ago being very upset, and some of our other civic leaders have been very nervous about this whole situation where we've just gone from, China to some other countries who are probably going to follow suit with China before too long. So we really are at a cusp of a new wave of, frankly, needing to have capacity in this country so that we can keep better track of what is happening to it. One thing that some of these articles have, I think, overplayed a little bit is that, at least in our case, we're not in the dire situation where this stuff is now going to a landfill. We're still finding markets for it and trying very hard and being successful. But as we look forward, we can see
But it's more expensive also.
it's more expensive,
Yeah.
it's harder, and the good news about it being a little more expensive is we should be having entrepreneurs now in this country where we can see what's happening to it, control it, make sure the right thing is happening. Entrepreneurs in this country opening up capacity to deal with recyclables. And so hopefully that'll start to happen quickly now. But it hasn't yet, frankly. So the mixed paper, we're not finding markets in this country, and we are going to the Philippines and Malaysia and India.
So for me, the big question is going to be, you got us all to recycle. Now what should we do?
Right.
So my husband was saying, well, should we be rinsing out all the plastic? Should we, rinse out the bottle? What should we as a community take on as part of the, what would make this viable and really a true part of
Yeah.
our
So
sustainability?
what can each person sort of do? Well, we're not suggesting that we rinse recyclables or use water on recyclables.
That's the next thing, right?
Because that's the next page, right, is conserving water. So we never wanted people to be trying to wash out their recyclables. But now that China has got these very tough standards for contamination, we do need to get it cleaner. So you'll see from us now, and we're engaged in this campaign, to get cleaner recyclables. Not to use water, though. We're calling it pour, scrape, wipe, right? If it's got liquid in it, pour it out. If it's got gunk on the sides still, in fact, one of our giveaways, should have brought it tonight, is going to be this small spatula, which you can get inside of small containers and get the stuff out. And then the third is wiping, and some stuff really lends itself well to just wiping with a paper towel, which is compostable, right? The paper towel hopefully is getting a second use in wiping something out, and it's getting put in the compost. So you do see that campaign from us, but stopping short of rinsing it out. And what else can people do? Well, there's two types of contamination that China and others are interested in. One is gunky food, which really makes it hard to recycle other stuff. So if it's gunky on one thing, even though that may not be a problem for that item, if it gets on paper, then that's another problem. So, and we've talked about that. The second type of contamination is not doing a good job separating materials. And China calls that contamination too. So if they get plastic that has metal in it, that's a different type of contamination, equally bad, right? So we've got to have our facilities, since we've gone to this single stream business where
Right.
everybody puts the stuff together, we've got to have our processing facilities here in this country separate that stuff back out better. And Green Waste and other facilities are bringing on newer technologies all the time now, trying to get those processing plants in this country to really separate stuff back out again. And honestly, it calls to question a little bit the decision we made X years ago to put everything in the same container, right?
Yeah.
So, but we've invested a lot in that, and we've got to stick with that for the immediate future at least. So, but what we do want people to do is a good job of, we have the 3 containers. Many folks need to do a much better job of separating the compostable from the old-fashioned recyclables from the stuff that can't be in either of those two, what we're now calling
But do
garbage.
you not remember the old days when people used to take their containers to do takeout?
To do
And-
takeout?
Yeah, yeah. People would take, I can remember my friends taking their own container to, you know, whatever place it was where they wanted to get the takeout, and they put it in their container and reused them.
Yeah.
An amazing concept.
Right. So there's a lot of great ideas like that. Some of them conflict with today's health standards. Like if you go to most places now, they'd say, sorry, I can't deal with your old
know,
container.
isn't
You
that-
know, It's,
Even if I'm going to eat it, right?
right, even
Yeah.
if you're the one that's going to eat it, maybe you give it to somebody else when you, I don't know what the health department thinks is going to happen. But, oh, were you going to chime in on that, Elise?
Oh, I was just gonna say.
Are you, Elise Savory?
Yeah.
Greetings.
Yeah, I was just going to add that as part of our foodware ordinance that we'll be taking to council in May, it's a multi-phased approach looking at reducing plastics, but a component of that will also include encouraging reusables for takeout. So for takeout containers, as you were, suggesting
goes
it
around
happened so
comes
many years
around.
ago is now, yeah, back around full circle, so.
It
just wanted
really
to
worked
chime in
very
with that.
well. And I more and more see people now in markets almost always having their own bags, rather than otherwise. And if you shop in much of Europe, you just don't get a bag at all, so.
I think that's been a real success story for us. We have banned certain types of plastic bags, and you're right, the number of reusable bags that you see, that's a very encouraging thing. And another piece that, of what Elise is talking about that will be coming back as a part of an ordinance item is now, we didn't ban the plastic bags in the produce area because we didn't think we had a good alternative. But now we think the alternatives can be either a compostable bag or a mesh bag. And so that's another sort of giveaway that we're working on is a mesh bag for the produce area. So we're inching forward there. Yeah.
I don't know about you two, but I feel so strongly about this. Just turned it off. I feel really strongly about this. I think that this, when you suddenly discover that we don't quite know where things are going, we may in Palo Alto, because I think that our culture is so attuned to that, but much of the country is handling it very differently.
Yeah.
And that's alarming. So once again, we'll have to lead the way.
And we're trying to. So this, not to get into the details of it, but just a sheet that we've left you with in your packet toward the bottom is a summary of the ordinance that Elise is talking about. It's a 3-phased approach. We're only suggesting adopting the first phase for now on May 20th, but it'll step us through the kind of things that would ultimately have us use reusable wherever we can see our way clear to do that, and then compostables as a second choice, and not use plastics that can't be either reused or composted.
Yeah. There is a story, and maybe some of you would remember it, about companies in the Midwest that I think they made paper before and now making cardboard boxes. Does that sound familiar? New York Times last weekend. Apparently a huge resurgence in the paper factories to go from what they did before to now the kind of boxes that Amazon and whomever else uses, because apparently the cardboard boxes are, probably going to
Taking
carry
off.
us away.
Right.
Comments on the zero waste from either of you? Look for your spatula.
Yeah, we'll get those too. Oh, yeah, so this last slide is just to remind you, because we've talked about this before, that our sustainability/climate action plan that you accepted part of and adopted part of over the course of the last couple of years will be updated by the end of 2020. And that's our goal and what we're going to spend a lot of time working on. And this team that we've introduced to you tonight is going to be taking the lead in these 7 areas. So I think enough said on that. And our last slide.
Could we, Phil, if
Yeah.
any of you want to say something about your specialty area, would you feel free to do that? Because it's really remarkable that you're all here tonight and that Phil has assembled a team. And I think that's going to make a big difference. Would you just start at one end and tell us who you are and what your area of specialty is?
Carla Daly and Karen and I are the co-chairs of the water section.
You and,
Karen.
is it Kara?
Karen.
Karen, okay. You're the water people, okay.
Oh, yeah, good idea. We're just going to put the circles up
I
here.
guess the one thing to add to Christine's for the water section
You guys
is,
wanna come up?
If you want to come to the mic just quickly,
Sure.
thank you. Otherwise, it doesn't get recorded.
that's right. So Karen North, I'm the watershed protection manager at the wastewater treatment plant. So Carla is with the utilities department, so we're a great team because we've got the water side and then the recycled water component, and that's why we are the water chapter. The one thing I wanted to add we actually are going to council May 13th for the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Plan. And so that will be something for council to adopt, and that's something as well, trying to green our streets, green our parks. How do we slow the flow of water and treat it before it goes into our conventional storm drain system? And then also on May 20th, my staff is bringing up, we're updating our lots of codes. So the sanitary sewer code, the stormwater code, the fats, oils, and grease code, and the septic hauler code. So those are all really interesting and riveting, but we will be coming on the 20th for those code adoptions as well. But they complement water because it's making sure that we're cleaning the water prior to it going out into the bay.
Thanks. Sorry. It's hard to remember to do that, right. Yeah, come on up and say a word or two if you want to about what you're doing, because I think it's remarkable that all of you are going to be working on this sustainability.
So Walter Passmore, the Natural Environment Chair. A brief little bit of information more on the carbon sequestration project. It's a way for us to have local mitigation of some of the carbon and pollutants that are being released. Whereas a lot of these programs, we rely on sources outside of our city, state, or even nation to do the right thing. So I think it is very significant that we're looking at doing something locally that everyone can see and directly benefit from. We are actively looking for funders right now. We've had some initial conversations with multinational corporations that are interested in launching a project in Palo Alto. So more to come, but we're excited that those conversations have at least started.
Before you
Stay
go,
up there, I think there is a question or two.
I just wanted to ask the sequestration. So with that, how does the dead, weeds and plants and so forth, do they give off carbon, or are those not
Right,
doing anything?
when plants and trees die, they do release about 80 to 90% of their carbon back to the atmosphere during decay process, and then the remainder gets absorbed into the soil. So soil is a big carbon sink. The microorganisms store it. And then also we have a big carbon sink in organisms that live in our aquatic environment. So the healthier we keep our bay, the more carbon it's able to store in very close proximity to Palo Alto. So we're trying to make sure that all of these different elements of the natural environment work together to sequester, take in as much carbon as possible, but then also to store as much. So we have a huge carbon bank. We don't really talk about that in our reduction goals. We just say we want to get rid of this much of our pollution, but we're not really talking actively in the sustainability plan about how we want to manage this huge investment that we have of banked carbon. And so I think in the future, we're going to explore that topic a little bit more, and we're going to try to quantify exactly what that bank is.
When you say bank, can you help me understand that?
Right, so like I said, carbon is stored
In
long-term in woody vegetation like trees, in soil, and in our aquatic environment.
And he's calling that a bank, the fact that the carbon is stored.
Okay, so he's calling it a bank because it's stored there. And then what do we do with it? We just keep it there?
Right, we want to keep it there. We don't want it being released to the
Released.
atmosphere.
So do you have a plan in terms of, is there a lot from the dead vegetation that releases back into the air? Is there a plan, to keep it?
We actually have explored a recycling program for woody vegetation that uses a technique called pyrolysis, which is a very high temperature, low oxygen combustion, and it creates energy, and then the output from that process is a charcoal-like material called biochar, which is a soil additive that helps the soil conserve water, but it's also a very, very long-term stable carbon product that we can increase our bank over time and not have that vegetation decay and return to the atmosphere. So Phil and I have been working on that.
And the sewage treatment plant's also considering this pyrolysis process for
Right.
dealing with sewage sludge. So we can make biochar out of it and get it incorporated in the soil where it'll be kept for a much longer time than what you're worried about, which is just kind of standard decay of material. So if we can get it in a charcoal form and get it into the soil, it'll stay there a lot longer.
So these kind of facilities, the infrastructure, right? Obviously, it's pretty expensive to build. What is the rate of return? How long before the facility needs to be revamped and rebuilt? Do we even make any money from it, or do we get to
So
see?
probably we can't justify doing this pyrolysis process, for example, because it is expensive. If that's the only goal, were to produce a biochar and stick it in the soil, we couldn't justify the expenditure on it. But like sewage sludge, for example, we've got to do something with it. And so the alternatives all cost money too. So if you have multiple benefits from something like this, then it becomes more doable, and that's what we're looking into. But you're right, if you just got this one benefit of sequestering carbon, it's difficult to justify something like pyrolysis, which is an expensive process.
So, thank you. So I'm really glad that the urban forest is moving forward. And you're just keeping it to South Palo Alto right now? Is it going to be expanded through the rest here?
We have a
Into-
focus on South Palo Alto because there's about 20% less tree canopy there than the north part of Palo Alto. However, programs of the Urban Forest Master Plan apply across the board. You know, we're not giving preference other than we have more opportunities in South Palo Alto to really increase our tree canopy.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because when I look at the Google Maps, there seems to be less tree green down around here, so, which is why.
Right downtown,
By
maybe.
downtown, yeah. So when you say North Palo Alto, you're including Crescent Park.
The
and
residential area.
Right, it's a generalization, and we do have it broken down on a neighborhood basis, and in 2020, we're going to be launching a new tool through our GIS improvements to be able to analyze tree canopy cover on a parcel-by-parcel basis or any selected area. So we could isolate downtown, we could isolate several blocks of interest, or, you know, any area that we want to look at.
Well, thank you. And
I think one of the difficulties in South Palo Alto, because I lived there, are the rolled curbs. Because it means the tree ends up being planted on your lawn rather than, you know, in the strip. And that makes a big difference. But thanks very much.
Shiva?
Sorry, but the mic is essential.
Shiva Swaminathan, I'm part of the electric vehicle team and the energy efficiency team. I don't have anything to add.
before you leave, before you leave, so, you know, we're talking about EV cars, electrical vehicles. And, you know, long time ago, the batteries of the electric cars were not recyclable, correct? So have they changed now are they recyclable? You know, batteries from Teslas and Priuses and all those lovely cars.
Yeah. I don't have a good answer for that. There are programs being looked at, but what I do know is cars need high-performance batteries. Once the performance degrades, it could be used for other types of applications. For example, utility applications, where the performance doesn't have to be fast-acting as the car. So kind of reuse is being definitely looked at. And then after that, it degrades further, recycling. I don't know the complete mechanics of the recycling.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, that's another area, like zero waste, you know, recyclables, that we want to see what happens to it, so it's not actually going to the landfills and just sitting there and.
Right. Yeah, so it's not
Stuff
going
into
to the
the ground.
landfills.
Yeah, and that would be something interesting to find out about too, you know. We kind of need to start tracking from cradle to
Great.
grave, yeah. Yeah, so if that can be included into the study, that would be really appreciated, because I'm sure I might just come back to ask about it again. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Shiva.
Sure.
You're the person who came because somebody else couldn't, so thank you for being here.
Oh, no, actually, I am,
Actually, you do belong here.
I do. Well, I guess I do. I hope so. I'm Yvonne Balish, and I am the co-chair for the energy team with Christine Tam, who couldn't make it tonight. She was the one that couldn't make it tonight. And so Christine works with the utilities marketing department, and then I work with the building division. And what we work on is improving energy efficiency in building construction. So right now, we are engaged in a cost-effectiveness study to look at higher building efficiencies for energy efficiencies that are higher than what are mandated by the state. So there's a state baseline energy code, and so Palo Alto in the past has had an energy reach code where we required in this past code cycle 10% better than the baseline for like residential, or you could include PVs and then get maybe 20% better. And then we had a similar program with the commercial new construction buildings, and they also had to have a certain percentage above baseline to meet our local codes. And so we adopted it as an ordinance. So in this next code cycle, we are looking to adopt a similar energy reach code, which may include higher than baseline efficiency for mixed fuel with PVs, or with PVs and what we call battery storage systems, ESS, energy storage systems. And then there's also electrification, which would be an all-electric building with no gas hookup, and that would be, there's a current statewide study, and it's reviewing all-electric new construction, residential and non-construction, for meeting just the energy standards or above, or including photovoltaics, and then also with photovoltaics and what we call ESS, the battery storage systems. So the state is now involved in this cost-effectiveness study, which is mandated by the Energy Commission. So you have to show that it's cost-effectiveness to, to require somebody to design a more efficient building for the public. And so we have to do this study, and so right now the study is going through the state, and it is sponsored by the IOUs, which is the investor-owned utilities like PG&E. And so we were able to join in, and what they will do for us is, since we have a different utility rate than what PG&E does, is that they will do an addendum with our rates for our climate zone. And so right now the studies are coming out. We have a draft study, and we're hoping to get the final study in June, right? And the reason why it's as late as June is because the energy code, the Energy Commission has a software modeling that they use to model buildings to evaluate energy efficiency. And the final software won't be completed until May, and so they can't get the report out till June. So we're hoping to get the final results from that and then make recommendations on what type of energy reach code that we can recommend for building construction for the next code cycle, for the 2019 code cycle.
Do we have any houses that are entirely self-sufficient? Entirely, I'm trying to think of a word
Off
to
the
use
grid,
that's sustainable,
or-
but-
Net zero energy.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for getting my mic again.
I believe there's like a handful of houses, but not too many that are fully sustainable right now. The current path was zero net energy, which was the, PVs to generate as much energy as you could, as you consume. But now the goal now is probably going to be zero carbon is what we're trying to go for, which is even a higher standard than just zero net energy.
And if I can just underscore what Yvonne was describing when she talks about our REACH code, California has some of the strongest codes in the nation, and Palo Alto reaches well beyond the California standards to go that much further. And so we've been such leaders in Palo Alto in this regard that Yvonne and Christine are going to be presenting at a conference next week, a nationwide conference on Palo Alto's work in this area and what leaders we've been as a community.
Where are you doing that?
Oh, so it's with the TLG, Transforming Local Government, and it's in Reno, Nevada. So we're going to present our green building program as an innovative practice with the city. So I guess a lot of people, we try to lead, I guess, by example in Palo
Yeah,
Alto. And we hope that-
congratulations.
Thank you. And we
Yeah.
hope other communities join us, so that's kind of what
Should
we're
be fun.
hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Michelle's going to be the facilitator, so.
Are you? Yes. Good.
So,
Hey, thank you so much.
all right, you're welcome,
Yeah.
thank you.
Did anyone not say something? I really appreciate all of you being here tonight. It makes such a difference. And I know my colleagues appreciate it as well.
Yes. Could I ask another
Bruce
question?
Flesh is the other staff person here, and he's a Bruce has been a big part of all of this for a long time. He doesn't happen to be one of our group leaders, but I do want to acknowledge him. You have probably seen him in action before.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for being here.
So our last slide is just reminding you what our recommendation is, namely that you recommend on to the full council the acceptance of our work plan, which, again, just to lead you back to it, this is the work plan, dum-da-dum, and so we're asking you to recommend to the full council that they accept that.
What do we do now?
Be right back.
Okay.
I'll get some water. You guys keep on.
Well, two of you know we need a break.
We'll take a 2-minute break while we wait
Wait.
for the motion.
Actually, I have two questions.
Nope.
No? Okay, no.
Any questions?
Wow.
For policy with commercial properties on, for dewatering.
Yeah. Well, technically, our ordinance applies to commercial buildings, but it did so in too broad a fashion, and arguably the same thing that applies to residential buildings applies to commercial buildings, and that's just not fair. So we've had to deal with commercial buildings on a case-by-case basis to date. And just as soon as we get this flurry of ordinances done on the 20th of May that we just described to you, we've got to get back to the dewatering. But in light of the council's summer break, it's going to be the fall before we return to you with a specific action on dewatering.
So fall.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm just kind of trying to figure out what kind of big projects are coming up, and hopefully we can get something in there.
Well,
Or they
and-
don't start until.
Well, and
until then.
even if they do, I think we've managed to handle them pretty well. Like the big project on San Antonio.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they installed a so-called cutoff wall, which dramatically reduced the amount of water they produced. And compared to even smaller commercial sites a year ago, there was dramatically less water from that site. So I think we're being successful dealing with these on a case-by-case basis, but we will come back in the fall with an ordinance revision.
Thank you. I look forward to that. And in here, it says the Green Building Summit. So there were some distinguished guests, and you named two of them. I was wondering who was the third one that was an international recognized leader in green building and sustainability.
That was a description of the second gentleman.
Oh, I see.
But we did have a third person, which was another staff person from the state. So we had quite a good turnout.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sorry,
How
it
come
might have
that
been a
third
comma
person
in the
was
wrong
not-
spot.
Was not named for a person. But,
Wasn't the Energy Commission, was it? No.
okay, deconstruction. Deconstruction is not commercial. Commercial buildings are not deconstructing and then salvaging, doing what residentials are doing so far. Or
Well,
are they?
the term refers to both, and so our requirements are going to deal with both. Elise, why don't you come up to the microphone and help me out, even though it's not a specialty for you, I know. So it is dealing with both. Did you have a more specific question about
Yeah,
it?
so, for example, some of the commercial buildings, there's a lot of concrete in them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously, you deconstruct, but I don't suppose you can reuse the concrete like how some of the wood or pieces in houses are sometimes repurposed, right?
Well, while you couldn't necessarily reuse or repurpose the concrete, it can be recycled.
So what typically happens to concrete is it gets ground up and used as base rock, becomes part of what we call base rock. And so it does get reused.
It does get
Yeah,
reused.
it goes to a facility, like the closest one to here is at Zanker Road near the San Jose Sewage Treatment Plant. So concrete will go to Zanker, it'll get beaten into small pieces, and it'll typically become part of base rock that they sell.
Do you count that as carbon? I don't know what the word is.
Carbon-free or,
And
the
Is-
process takes energy because you do have to, hammer it back down into a small
transport,
size,
right?
and you got to transport it. So it's not carbon-free to recycle or reuse concrete, but it's still, we think, very much worth doing. Most of these processes, when something gets recycled, it's not carbon-free to recycle it, unless you do a life cycle analysis and realize, okay, we're not, we're preventing having to go back to another source, mine it back out, and create rock, right? So you start comparing these things to their best alternative, and all of a sudden they look pretty darn good. But if you just look at it on its own, it won't be energy-free, right? But if you compare it to the alternatives of going out and getting some raw material and trying to turn it into a product, then all of a sudden it becomes the lesser of two evils, let's call it, and the better of two evils, actually. Yeah.
is there a charge for it when they, I guess the,
Yeah, they can get
owner-
money for it, like Zanker, I think. Don't you think they get money for the base rock from concrete?
So someone who is disposing of their concrete there would not be able to get money for that, but there is an
can
economic
sell it.
value in,
Right. That's how
crushing it
Zanker
up and
makes money,
having,
right,
yes.
Is they charge for hunks of concrete, and then they get money for base rock. Not much, but, that's how they make their little money.
so do we measure how much carbon is being being released by the concrete that is transported? And, is there,
I'd say that's a weakness right now in the whole country trying to
Right.
sort out what they call embedded concrete, where when you make new concrete, it takes a certain amount of energy, it takes a lot of energy to make new cement, new concrete, and trying to analyze that whole life cycle and compare one life cycle situation to another, that's a weakness for all of us. It's
Phil, at a higher level, do we have a higher level estimate around construction and deconstruction objectives in general?
Well, a higher level,
You might not be able to quantify the actual concrete, but construction and deconstruction is a big bucket of elements. And do we have some targets or some ways of estimating the value to the environment in pursuing that at all?
the main thing that has led us to this deconstruction ordinance is trying to reduce the amount of stuff that goes in landfills. So right now, construction sites are roughly half, construction materials, demolition materials, are roughly half of what we're still putting in the landfill. So the main metric that has driven us to this deconstruction ordinance is trying to reduce the amount of stuff that goes in landfills. And it's much harder, and that's very quantifiable. Like I say, it's about half of what we've got. So if we can reduce that by another half, we will have a 25%. Yeah, we will have had. So that's the main metric that's driven us toward the deconstruction ordinance. And, I just have to admit that from a carbon perspective, we're not, the whole country's not there yet on trying to estimate how much carbon reduction you get from that activity. But everybody's kind of working on trying to do that. But I'm kind of reluctant to to make generalizations about it.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
landfill is a great
That's our-
example. I just don't want us to lose sight of that also, you know, how much of, I mean, the carbon is being released
Right.
from the trips, from the concrete itself.
Yeah, we know that the trips are minor.
Okay.
It's this embedded business that's much harder to deal with. You know, what is it, how much carbon does it take to produce new concrete versus getting the benefit of using this old stuff for base rock? Those kind of comparisons are difficult for us.
Thank you.
So we're left back with our recommended motion that Policy and Service recommend to the full council that our work plan, this document, be accepted by the full council.
So I move
The
the
recommendation.
motion. Yes.
I'll second it. But I wanted to make some amendments.
You want to what?
Make some amendments. Or, yeah,
Please.
okay. So,
We got a motion and a second, and
actually,
Wendy, you want to speak to your motion first?
I think most of my questions have moved forward, and I think that, you know, this is a good start of the plan to get it continued, and I'm especially happy to hear about the canopy going forward. It's like one of the most natural way of, you know, reducing greenhouse gases. So, and everybody else, you know, gave their presentation. It's pretty impressive. So, yeah.
yeah, so, yeah, thank you for everyone for coming and for your work. It's definitely headed in the right direction. So it's interesting to hear that 94% of our carbon footprint is transportation. That's a huge amount. And so if we're serious about really making a dent in it, I think we need to do more around that. And so, so kind of the amendment I'd like to propose is really kind of around the two things I talked about earlier, which is I think we really want to try to get more, I mean, the only real way to get a serious dent in our carbon footprint is to actually make some sort of impact on transportation. Because that's 94%. That's the biggest chunk of.
We start riding a skateboard?
Huh? That's right. So we should make it so that Liz rides a skateboard to city council meetings, right? When we've done
That's a
that,
great idea.
we know that we've won, right? So let's make it so that it's so easy that Liz wants to ride a skateboard here, right? So I think that's a really good goal for.
Before we get that 94% burned into everybody's mind, let me just say that there's a couple ways of looking at that. And that assumes, correct me if I'm wrong, do you want to do the qualifier here, or do you want me to do it?
The qualifier is that the 94% assumes that we're considering our natural gas offsets. If we count our natural gas offsets, then it's 94%. If we don't count our natural gas offsets, then it's 62% or 61%, and then natural gas is 31% of our remaining emissions.
I only wanted Christine to say that. It's still the majority.
Yeah.
But we don't want to burn the 94%, because a lot of people, as you know, have criticized the purchase of offsets and counting that as the.
Okay.
it
Well,
were.
whether it's
So
94 or 60%, it's still a lot.
Yeah, it's still the
It's still a lot, right?
majority, and it's getting bigger every day.
Yeah, right. And so, and it's one of our top priorities of this
Absolutely.
This year. So, so I really think we need to do more around trying to get people to, you know, take a skateboard to city council meetings. No, I mean, just.
All right,
No, I mean, I think it just enjoy, we want to make it super easy. So I think what I would like to propose, and I got inspired by the article I read about how Cambridge is basically saying anytime you're going to do any kind of street work, anytime we're going to modify the street at all, you go for a protected bike lane. Because, I mean, I can imagine, Liz, one reason why you probably don't want to bike here is because you might get killed, right? You probably feel like you might get hurt, right?
That's a very strong motivation.
Yeah, so we should like make it so that people feel safe, right? And it's hard to feel safe when there's a 2-ton car whizzing by you, right? I mean, some people like me will do it, but you know, even I get kind of scared, right? I mean, there's some cars whiz by me, and you know, I almost got hit a couple of times, right? So, and it shouldn't be like that, right? It should be, people should feel safe, right? If we really want people to do this, they have to feel safe. And I think, and really, I think protected bike lanes is one of the strong ways that would enable everyone to want to take a bike, right? Or scooter or skateboard, whatever their mode is most likely. So I like to, rather than, because I think you guys got like 99% of this right. You know, I think you guys are definitely heading in the right direction. But I think in terms of the biggest impact really is how do we really kind of hold ourselves to the thing that we're trying to do, which is really save the environment here. And I think getting protected bike lanes is one strong step in that direction. So I was wondering if staff can explore the policy that Cambridge, I think they're voting on it tonight or tomorrow night, like sometime really soon. And I think it's first in the country, right? And so they're really trying to make a concerted effort to have it so that everyone feels safe, right? Whether you're a grandmother or a 6-year-old, right? Everyone feels safe, right? Not just you know, a chosen few.
So you want to say explore?
Yeah, explore.
The possibility
Yeah, I
of
mean, I think.
protected bike paths?
Yeah, look at what Cambridge is doing, right? And it's like making the rounds on Twitter right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'd be happy to take a look at the Cambridge model and examine how it relates to our bikeways plans and.
Cambridge, Mass.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing. And then the second one is something which I talked a little bit about before, but you know, a car is about 300 to 400 times heavier than a bike, right? And it takes about that much more energy as well for every mile traveled. And I mean, even if all the cars are fully electric, it's a massive amount of energy that's being expended, and you know, this greenhouse gas is being produced. Maybe not necessarily in Palo Alto, but you know, in some coal factory, you know, in Timbuktu, right? But it's all one planet, right? We're all kind of on the same planet here, and whether it's, you know, carbon's being produced here or being produced in, you know, some unfortunate state, it's still being produced in the environment. So I think, you know, this electric vehicle thing, I like the name electric vehicle, but it's like really electric cars, and it really should be electric vehicles. I think you guys got it right. It is the right name, but I think the investment in cars there should be at least some sort of balance in terms of these small electric portable vehicles, because they have such a much more dramatic impact on the environment than a car. I mean, it just takes a little bit to make it go really, really far. And so rather than just this massive investment only for electric cars, we should stay true to the name. What is the name? Yeah, it's electric vehicles, right? So it really should be electric vehicles, like all vehicles, not, you know, electric vehicles except for scooters, bikes, skateboards, and everything else. It should be electric vehicles, right? And so I mean, I would like to see that there's at least some balance, right? Maybe half for cars and half for something else, right? Even that, it's not quite fair, but it's still, that's a better step than what it is right now, which is 100% cars, right? It doesn't seem right. So I'd like to see more of a balance in terms of really holding to the name electric vehicles versus just electric cars.
Can I make a suggestion? If you look at the mobility item, you can see that there's a bike share and e-scooter pilot program. And perhaps encouraging us to do more in that one is a place where we can focus on the portable electric vehicles that you're talking about.
Well, I mean, I think mobility is one thing, right? But I mean, in electric vehicles, I think this is definitely in the right direction, right? I think having rebate programs makes sense for electric vehicles, like electric scooters, electric bikes. Having chargers for electric bikes and scooters makes a lot of sense. So I think this program is absolutely right, except it's excluding all the other electric portable vehicles, which each one of them has a, you know, 200, 300 times better impact on the environment than an electric car. And yet we're excluding that from this program. Really, all the things you're doing right now for electric cars should be for all the other electric vehicles as well, not just cars. It's not right, it's not fair, it's not what we're trying to do in terms of having an impact in terms of sustainability.
So what would you add to the motion that is, I said that to this motion, we would also add, explore protected bike lanes.
Yeah, like what Cambridge is doing.
As in the
yeah.
Cambridge example.
As
We
in-
could also add, just to the same sentence or a new sentence, we could say explore, we'd like to have explore in there. Explore having similar programs, rebate programs for.
Well, not just rebate, but
balance.
everything you have on the slide, right?
Okay.
Everything you have on the slide, but have it not just for cars, have it for all the
Yeah.
other electric portable vehicles that are out there. I mean, just on my way here, I saw like 7 electric skateboards going past me the other way, because I was coming from the Caltrain. I saw like, I don't know, maybe 4, 5 electric bikes. I mean, I saw a couple one wheels. I mean, I probably saw at least as many, probably more like electric portable vehicles on the way here than I saw cars. Now, of course, I'm on Bryant and, Bike Boulevard, so it's maybe a little bit hard to see cars there, but still, I mean, the point is, there's like, I probably saw 20 electric portable vehicles on the way here, right? Why don't we make that more of an emphasis versus just cars? So I think you have it right here. It's missing, I mean, it doesn't actually say it, but what you guys are talking about is only cars, and that's not going to have the impact that we want. So that's the other part. So hopefully the maker will accept.
Okay, and I'm trying to think, right? Should just automatically go on when we start talking, right?
No,
So, do you want to add that in? Do you want that to be an understood part?
No, I think it should be in there, because I think
Okay,
I think.
tell me how you want it added in.
So let's see, on the Cambridge one,
Read what I.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
So if you were to accept both of those parts, it would be that Ku and Tanaka move to recommend the council accept the work plan for the 2018-2020 Sustainability Implementation Plan, direct staff to explore the Cambridge, Massachusetts model of requiring protected bike lanes when significant road work is undertaken, and direct staff to include all vehicle types in electric vehicle programs, with 50% dedicated to cars and 50% for other vehicle types, including electric scooters, skateboards, bicycles, etc.
You should be an awesome city clerk, I wish.
I think rather than including it in the motion, though, if we could, I'm trying to think of another way to do that without it being quite so cumbersome. Maybe we can pass this motion, and then we can say additional items to explore.
Well, I just want to make sure it happens, because I think staff has so many different things, and if we don't make it part of the motion, and, whether it's 94% or 60% of the,
Tell me how you all feel about it.
I think we're kind of indifferent. It could be either a separate.
If you're indifferent, then, and you're okay with that, Lydia?
I'm okay with it, but Greg, I was just wondering, it's already included in the mobility portion of it, a large part of it.
But not like having rebates, not having.
Oh, you want
I
IC,
want
ICE
I want all of what they have here. Yeah,
for all vehicle
all
types?
vehicles, yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than
But wouldn't
discriminate.
it be all mobility types then?
I think as long as you give us words like explore and include, it's not so prescriptive that we're not even sure whether or not we can do it. We can go in and we can
Can
start
look at, yeah.
integrating it into the program and then report back to you so that you can hold us accountable and be able to tell you where we're doing it and how we're doing it.
As long as you guys are okay with it.
Well, the thing that was a little prescriptive was the 50/50, which I know
Oh,
you.
does that have to be 50/50? I mean, I
Yeah.
just,
Can you
Maybe-
restructure it?
he didn't
How,
have
how about an explore, including all vehicle types and electric vehicle programs, potentially with 50% dedicated to cars and 50% for other vehicle types?
Let's
Or just take that part
out
out.
It'd be
the
nice if you
numbers,
just took it
yeah.
out. Because we just don't know yet what that breakdown might be. But if we can explore it, you could say a better balance between the two, or, which is what you had
Yeah,
said at one
better
point.
balance, yeah, that's probably what we want to say.
Great.
You got something you can stick up on the board?
Nope.
Not in this
I can
room.
read it to you again.
Okay.
I think I can read it to you again.
So accept the work,
That's
the
right, you can't
implementation
put it
plan.
up there, I realize.
So then part C would be direct staff to explore including all vehicle types and electric vehicle programs, striking a better balance between cars and other vehicle types.
Does that work for you? Works for the staff, works for me.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that, I think we need to vote. All those in favor? Unanimous? Thanks, David. Thank you for tracking us. We don't have anything else that we're going to take up tonight that's on the agenda. So I did ask Ms. Flaherty if we could agree on, or maybe, do you want to do that tonight, Michelle?
I think we can just, I think really briefly, under future meetings and agendas, you have an item, a handout that shows.
You both have this? Yeah.
What we have queued up. So at our next meeting in May, on May 14th, right now we're scheduled to review the work plan for traffic and transportation. So tonight we did one of the council priorities, and next month we would do the other council priority that would be coming to PNS. And then other items that might be scheduled in the future are listed at the bottom of the sheet. We have a bit of a backlog with respect to audit follow-up reports, and so we'd like to fold those into the work plan as well. And I can work offline with the chair, or we can talk about this in more detail. I really defer to the chair on that.
If you all don't mind if we work offline, it's already April, and we have, how many audits did we say?
We,
8 or 10?
Yeah, it looks like
Or even more.
we could spread them out over 2 meetings.
There's like 12.
We may have to do it over 3 meetings. Let's see how we do. Didn't we agree that the next meeting we would attempt to take up the number that we felt we could actually get through?
Well, we've
No,
already got
we're doing the work plan at the
Yeah,
next
we've got the
one.
work
Right,
plan for
right.
traffic and transportation, but we could do it in June. We could do audits in June, if you
Good.
like.
And see how far we get, actually.
Okay. Well, we'll need to bring staff. So what we'll do is we'll try to target the ones that were originally targeted for March. And I'll circle back with the auditor's office and see if they think we can bring all of
Okay.
those or a portion of them.
Good.
Great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just wanted to bring up something that we talked about at the break room at the council meeting, and you said to bring it up here, so.
I've got to think if we can or not. Ask Michelle if you can bring it
Not
up.
to discuss it here, but just to see if we can get it onto the agenda.
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah, so one of the things that the chair and I talked about was, how do we get like some sort of performance standards going, right? So I don't know if were you at the council meeting Monday, or no, you weren't?
But I was watching.
Oh, you watched, okay, yeah, so we had the staff report, and it was really well-intentioned. I mean, it was about the valet, like doing valet in downtown so that you have more parking spots, which, generally is a good idea. But, on the staff reports, like, there was like a 4-year pilot or 3-year pilot that they did the valet, and nowhere in the report did it talk about how many cars they actually park. Like, is it just one person parking, getting the car valeted, or are we like parking 50 cars a day? Like, how many, like, what was the performance of the valet system, right? And we're asked to prove this $1 million contract. And there's zero performance data about, like, well, how did the pilot perform, right? I mean, you would think that if you're trying to approve a $1 million contract, the first thing you would want to do is, well, how did the pilot go, right? But it just it performed well, but nothing about like 1 car, 10 cars, 20 cars. How many cars got parked a day, right? And the other thing that was really kind of missing was like, like how much did the pilot cost, right? So is the real program, is it, it's like $900,000, but how much did the pilot cost? Like, so we could get some sort of idea of how much cost per car or per parking that it took, right? And so the chair recommended, I should bring up as an agenda item for us to schedule, to actually talk about it in policy and services. So that's what I wanted to bring up. And I think it helps, like, of course, us to make decisions, but also helps staff to understand, like, how are different programs performing, right? Whether we want to keep doing them or not do them, right? But to me, this is kind of obvious stuff. But I was talking to Liz, and she says, even like, ever since she's been on council, she's been on here twice already. It's never happened. And I said, and she said she recommended, like, why don't you bring up the policy and services, and we can try to see how to make this happen. But to me, it's kind of obvious, right, that you would want to have this.
Absolutely.
But it seems like for staff, it's not obvious, and so.
We can't go into it in detail here tonight since it's not agendized, but we can certainly agendize it for the
Okay, thank
future.
you. Appreciate it.
I do want to clarify for you, we certainly appreciate the value in it. I think quite often, we're bound by limitations on whether or not we have the processes currently in place to get the right data, the right technology in place, or whether we're resourced appropriately to have the staff who would do that analysis and support the system. So there's a lot for us to talk about in terms of
But we should know how
infrastructure.
much it costs for the pilot. I mean, we
Right.
had a contract, right? And I mean, I would just ask the contractor, so how many cars each park, right? We don't have to have like a massive audit, but
Right.
just like, what, was it 1 car a day? Was it 50 cars a day?
Right.
200 cars? Like, how many people used it, right? It would have been really nice to know.
So, yeah, we can certainly add that to the list.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'm sorry we can't